Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. This is Mike Steckline with the Institute for Enterprise Excellence. Hope everyone's having a good day. Today we got a real treat. The presenter is someone that I've actually never met. Mike and I have never actually met face to face, but I feel like I know him really well. And I will explain a little bit what we're going to be learning in today's webinar. Just a little housekeeping and ground rules here. The phones are on mute so that we don't have background noise that can sometimes interfere with the presentation. But we will be recording this. We are recording this now, and also we're going to unmute the phones a little bit later on during the Q&A part. So we'll get to that shortly. By way of background, as I said, Mike and I have never met, but we did. I first learned about the work that he was doing when he was in Tanzania, and at the time I was with the Theta Care Center for Healthcare Value, and Mike was doing work in Tanzania, and he was trying to secure some additional resources there to help continue the work that he was doing, and we called it Boots on the Ground. So back in 2013, we did a webinar, and we had some fun working through Skype and trying to get that technology working and got the word out. And I believe we were able to get some people to help out there with the work that Mike was doing in Tanzania. Terrific work. And if you go to that URL at the top, the recording to that webinar is still available, and you can learn about the work that Mike was doing at that time. Now, today, in 2017, Mike is now located in the Philippines, and the topic of his presentation is actually the title of a book that he's writing and is making available for folks, and he's going to be talking about that today. So this is a topic of great interest for me. Mike and I were chatting earlier, and I'm always interested, and people ask about how do you practice new habits, how do you develop new habits, how do you adjust behaviors, how do you be more successful at trying to do new things, or perhaps stop doing some things that perhaps you want to stop doing. And it's a topic of real interest. And so without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to a friend and colleague, Mike Grogan, who's going to walk us through some concepts. Mike?
Thank you, Mike. Good morning, America. I got a small bit emotional looking at that world map as I started looking at the countries and places around the world that I've lived and traveled to. And where I live today, the Philippines, is exactly 7,000 miles away from my home, my place of birth, which maybe you may guess by my accent, you've already identified, but I'm Irish, and I've been an overseas Irish person for the last 11 years. So I've been very blessed to work in many different countries, many different industries. I spent 4 amazing years in Philadelphia, working in the pharmaceutical industry. I spent time in the UK, spent time working in a hospital in Africa, introducing them to lean, which I guess that's how me and Mike got connected. And now in the Philippines. And we're doing I'll later explain more about the work we're doing here in the Philippines. But I think what would be of most interest to our listeners is this topic about habits, this topic about behavioral change, this topic about how to create a culture of excellence, both as an individual and as a team. And I guess when people look at the cover of the book that I've written, they get a bit curious in terms of the title itself, and then maybe a bit skeptical. They have some question marks about the word, especially that word easy. That I'm really am making a bold statement here that you can make personal change easy, both in business and life. And for a lot of people, that may seem countercultural, because the answer to is change easy would be met with a lot of resistance, and people maybe have a lot of painful thoughts come to their mind when they think about personal change. So I'm very excited about opening that up for discussion. So I'm going to go through the slides, and I guess, can I get the next slide? Oh yes, there we go. Well, first of all, I'm actually not trying to sell the book to anyone. I'm giving it away as a gift. So everyone here, our listeners, there'll be live and of course the recording. I just send everyone a link, and you see the link on the image that you're seeing on the slide. I want to give you this book. It's taken me years to be worthy enough to be in a position to write this book. I am absolutely fascinated by the topic of personal development, organizational development. About, I would say, almost 10 years ago, I read my first book in the category, a book by Dr. Stephen Covey, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And that really brought me on this journey of absolute fascination with this subject. And I've gone through many failures myself. And I guess this book, if I could only write one book, this is the book that I believe I was born to write. I've written 2 other books, which I'll talk about later, but this is the one that I've spent hundreds of hours, if not thousands of hours, over the last years. And I want you to have it. And later I'll explain why I'm so passionate about this. And this is more than just work for me. This is really a mission, and how I can be of greater service to a greater number of people. So that's the link. Please use the link. You can download it as we talk, or download it later. But I guess the second part of the conversation is, yes, you may download the link, but you still may not decide to read it. So I want to encourage you to read it. Are we at the next slide? Don't think I have control, Mike.
Yes, you do.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry, I do. Sorry, a small delay. So I guess, of course, an author, I can't think of any author who say, don't read my book. Well, maybe there is some folks out there who are not trying to discourage the wrong audience. But I really believe, and I'm very blessed that I have folks in my network have agreed to be advanced release reviewers. So this book is not yet released. It's only next month we're going to release it. And you'll see, as of Goodreads, as of right now on Goodreads, there's over 101 reviews. Just please go and just check out those reviews, what folks are saying. Remember, I'm not trying to sell you this book. I'm giving you this book for free. But it's the message of this book. And it's not just the science of habit creation that I'm talking about, but is how to make it easier for you. So maybe that's the last mention of that, but I really want to encourage you to take the time. It'll take you maybe 2 hours, if not a max of 3 hours, to read the book. But it really is, yeah. I think this book could turn out to be my greatest gift to the world. So let me answer the question why I wrote this book, and what is special about this book, and what is the story behind this book, and why you should write this book. So to give a bit of background about myself, I would consider myself a lean coach. That's something I got exposed to 9 years ago when I worked for Merck Pharmaceutical Company. And it really forever changed my thinking. And getting exposed to the teachings of that Toyota production system, Dr. Deming, the Kaizen mentality, it totally changed my way of thinking, totally changed how I looked, not just at business improvement, but improvement in every area of my life. I've since gone and entered a very special arena in the world of speaking. And especially in the Philippines, if you were to go on Facebook right now and type my name into Facebook, you can see that we have an amazing amount of followers every day, almost here. Well, every second day for sure. I feel very blessed to connect with so many Filipinos, especially around the world, since Filipinos are spread all over the country. Our videos, we've got many videos that have gone viral. Today I did a talk, 8 hours ago, I did a talk with 400 people. Tomorrow I do a talk, later your time, because it's nighttime over here. I do a talk for a local university here, University of Philippines, at one of their graduation ceremonies. I guess the point I'm making here is, I'm not trying to boast by saying this. I'm not trying to impress anyone, but I'm trying to express a very important point. The number one thing that pains me from doing all these talks, because I'm with the crowd maybe for an hour, 2 hours, max 3 hours, and some of them I'll never see them again. what keeps me awake at night is thinking how much of this is actually going to sink into their hearts. How much of this is going to cause true behavioral change? How much of this is going to cause them to create habits? Because I'm very much convinced, and I'm mainly reflecting on my own life here, inspiration on its own is not enough. And many times I've been inspired to do good things and to change my own behaviors, or to many times we inspired to do certain things at our own organizations, but many times I've fallen short. And it's not just an inspiration, knowledge as well. Knowledge on its own is not enough. I really believe, for a long time, I used the phrase knowledge is power. I used to love that phrase, but I don't believe in that anymore. I really don't believe that knowledge is power. I believe that applied knowledge is power. I believe that, yes, there is a problem in the world between those who know and those that do not know. But I think a greater problem is the image we see right now on that screen, the gap between knowing and doing. And I say this with such confidence because I see it in my own life. And I mentioned that book, that first book on personal development that I ever read, Stephen Covey. Over the years, I'm almost embarrassed to share this, but I became a personal development junkie. I read hundreds of books on personal development. I've watched hundreds of TED Talks, thousands of podcasts. And I'm a Christian. I've read the Bible many, many times, pages and pages. But my shortcoming as a professional, as a friend, as a Christian, as a brother, as a sister, as a son, my shortcoming is application. And most of the time I know exactly what I need to do. But where I fall down is doing that consistently. And I've seen this problem. I believe that this problem is not just of me that has experienced this. I see this in every organization that I engage with. And I see this in the faces of the audiences that I engage with. I've been blessed now. If I look back since the start, I've probably spoken to over 100,000 people. And I know everyone feels this, the gap between knowing and doing. And so that's part of my motive of, like, how can we solve this? How can we get to the true meaning of how can we close this gap? And to make it even more powerful, can you see those two statistics that I'm flashing on the screen?
Yep.
So these are, maybe this is the depressing moments of the presentation, but hopefully you can connect with me here. And this is, I guess, me defining the problem before we talk about solutions. I call this the change problem. There is a massive, this is an epidemic around the world. 80% of New Year's resolutions don't even make it into February. And companies, as teams and organizations, were not much better. And I'm sure you've heard this statistic quoted before, but 70% of all company change initiatives failing to meet those expectations of what the change could bring. So we have an epidemic of what I'm calling the change problem. And to move past that, because another way to look at these statistics is to think, well, okay, at least there's a percentage of those that are successful as individuals with personal change as well as companies. But then another depressing problem, in a way, that there was a teaching problem. So we have a change problem, we also have a teaching problem. And I am putting my hand up as guilty number one for being one of the folks that, especially at the start of my career, when I started teaching lean and continuous improvement and Six Sigma when I was in Merck in Philadelphia, I would put my hands up and quite embarrassed. I was a terrible teacher. I thought I was doing good, but I was killing my students with death by PowerPoint. I was killing them with believing that knowledge was the answer. I failed to understand at the start of my career the importance of habits, the importance of habit creation, the science of habit creation, in how important that was to create lasting personal change. So that's what caused me to birth this book, if you will. From my massive experience with failure to my focus on, okay, what does work? And it's brought me to this point of writing this book. And just as a reminder, if anyone that just joined our call, that's the link. You're free to go on that link and download the book for free. I'm not trying to sell the book to anyone. I'm trying to give this book away to as many people as possible, because for me, this is a mission. So what I'm trying to pinpoint here is the power of habit. I believe Charles Duhigg's work is one of my favorite works on the part of my awakening. Me and Mike, just before this call, talked about the amazing work that BJ Fogg is doing and the folks in Stanford. I believe in the last 10 years, we are learning more about the neuroplasticity, the neuroscience, about the subconscious brain. We're learning more about this thing in our head, our brains, than any time in human history. So it's super exciting that more and more work is coming out on this subject. So I won't dwell too much on I do spend some time on this. I have a chapter dedicated to this in the book, but I'll summarize the chapter in really one sentence, and I think people will resonate this. I believe that the real reason we're bad at change is that we keep repeating the same mistakes over and over again. And the evidence of this is if we reflect on all our changes, our failed attempts at change, whether that be trying to learn a new language, whether that's trying to become more disciplined with maybe your health, more disciplined with even waking up on time or whatever time you want to do, whatever type of change you're trying to make, whether it be personal or professional, to read more, to meditate more, to whatever, to be more generous, whatever that may be. I believe that there is certain what I call the top 10 mistakes in behavioral change. And I actually leverage study done in Stanford for this. And what I find is we have a misconception about the reasons we're bad at change. Sometimes we're a bit lazy and say, oh, it's because we don't have the willpower or we're lacking motivation. And that's not it. There's far more to why we're failing at this than we're succeeding. So let me move to the next slide, because if my one thing that I want out of this presentation is you to read the book. I want you to read this in your leisure this weekend, share it with people that you love. And because in this book, I guess there's three things that is different about this book. And once again, I'm not trying to sell the book to anyone. I'm trying to gift it to as many people as possible. The first point is, and I'll explain this in a bit more detail in the next slide, is I really want to give people maybe new perspective on habit creation, a new formula that I've used that perhaps you may not have seen before, but it makes sense. It really does make sense. So number one, a new perspective on habit creation that's easy for you to apply. Number two, and this is where a huge learning from me, when I look back at my past attempts at learning, at trying to teach others, as well as being influenced by others, I really believe that, the words make us think, but stories make us link. Stories make us connect. So 2/3 of this book, so the vast majority of this book isn't about me going about different studies or different theories or very data driven. The 2/3 of this book is focused on 7 characters. And you can see there I've drawn their cartoon images at the bottom with 7 ordinary people who are going to use this new methodology of habit creation to create change in their life over a period of 21 days. Half of their problems are related to their personal lives. The other half, or 3 out of the remaining 7, are focused on issues at work. And it doesn't matter what the change people want to focus on. It's this, I believe, this method for creating new habits in your life is applicable to all areas of life. And then I guess the third part of what makes this book unique is, and I'm quoting Bruce Lee on this, but knowing without doing is not enough. Willing is not enough. We must do. And I really encourage, and that's why I guess we've got so many reviews on Goodreads already from the advanced release reviewers, is this importance of actually applying experimenting with the concepts on yourself before you start teaching this to others. So that's what I really want to encourage with people. Actually, I mentioned in the book, I'm quite my goal here is not for people to agree on my methodology to habit creation. I'm actually quite okay if people disagree or have an approach that's better. My goal is really for people to start experimenting on a method to habit creation that works for them. And I want that experimentation to happen within this 21-day period. And that for me is what makes this
book so unique, and why I believe I'm so passionate about getting as many people as possible to read it. So if we jump to the next slide, does anyone recognize this guy? Does he look familiar to any soccer fans out there? Well, he's not a basketball player. Just to clarify, he is Leon Messi. So he's a very famous footballer. He's won the four times he's won the World Football Player of the Year, plays for the Spanish team Barcelona. He's from Argentina. Very famous guy in the world of football. Now, I'm sure he does not know yet about this book, but I am using his name as an acronym. So I am inspired by his name to kind of describe this approach to habit creation that we're using. So this is, I guess, the heart of the book. And actually, I'm kind of in the book itself, I'm using a very novel approach. I guess this is the theory, but I tell the theory at the end. I tell the stories first. And actually, only after reading 2 or 3 of the stories, you'll see, wait a second, all of these guys, they're answering the same questions. So all the 7 characters answer the same questions, which is designed around this formula. And those questions are really designed to get these 5 elements. So in the book itself, you'll see the 10 questions I use, the actual questions, but the questions are specific to that particular change. So number 1 is meaning. And I think this won't come as a surprise to anyone here. You know, what is the motive behind you trying to get this, how you say, new behavior to become a habit? So I'm really leverage a lot of the work of Tony Robbins here in terms of, you know, what is the desired result you're looking for, as well as what is the purpose behind that desired result. Also, what is the feeling? There's so many different questions you can ask to push back to meaning. What does this mean to you? I do a lot of training and workshops here, and by far, and if I were to tell one short story, the most powerful exercise I do when I teach problem solving is why should you improve your problem solving skills? And when I started, just an example as from my bad teaching days, when I was a bad teacher at the real beginning, I would actually disrespectfully tell people the answer to that question. And I was ignorant. I didn't think I was doing anything wrong, but I would tell 30 people, operators of a pharmaceutical operations, I would say, okay, here's 5 reasons why you should improve your problem solving skills. It was only years later did I realize how disrespectful that was. Today, for that same question, it is the single most important question in the entire training. I give the participants an hour if they need it, even an hour and a half if they need it, to explore that question in detail, because I really believe that success is sometimes 80% about the why and 20% about the how. So making the behavior meaningful and the different questions you can ask. For example, I was with the group yesterday, 24 hours ago, and another way I asked the question is, what's the consequences of you quitting this behavior? So I was doing a follow-up training on a behavioral change program with this team, and I asked them, what is the consequences of you quitting this program? What pain is going to be caused for you and the people you love? So that's the first element of the Messi approach. The second element is easy. How not to make the behavior easy, but how to design the environment to make it easier for you to do the behavior and difficult for you not to do it. Now, my single big inspiration here is Dr. Edwards Deming, which I know is a big inspiration for Mike and a lot of people on this call. I love the quote, and I had it as my email signature for I think over 2 years. A bad system will defeat a good person every single time. And the same goes with behavioral change. You know, for example, what is it fair to say millions of people go on new diets every year? But these people, most of them, I would say over 90%, make a critical mistake. They fail to diet the first place they should diet. And I think people on the call know the answer to this. It's their kitchen. You know, designing your environment and to remove those triggers, those unhealthy triggers in your environment. Those, even sometimes the smell or even the sight of these Certain foods, if we're talking about healthy behaviors, are enough to bring you into your old ways and old habits. So behaviors, and even leveraging tools, the environments and leveraging tools can have a massive impact on habit creation. So that really leverages on the work of the importance of triggers and the importance of how can you design your environment to make it easy to do the new behavior and difficult to not do it. The third aspect is social. Now, once again, for most people, this is all common sense, but in the words of Mark Twain, common sense is not common. And a lot of the times myself, I realize this, but I resist it. This one, social, is the one I resisted the most. And this is the concept of asking the question, who's going to help me create these new habits? Number one. And number two, who am I going to help when I have created these new habits? So it's receiving help from others and giving help to others. It's if you call it the energy of the universe, but this is so powerful. I really believe that, the words of Helen Keller, together we can do so much. And I've coined the phrase in many of the trainings here, the concept of a success partner, and not accountability partner. I really encourage people not to use the word accountability. And I'm smiling as I say this, because I know in a way accountability is an important part of it, but as adults we have a lot of us have a very negative association with the word accountability, since we reflect back to our childhood with our parents keeping us accountable, our teachers keeping us accountable, our educators. Sometimes we have a bad we've put the word accountability in a bad category in our head when it comes to a behavioral change. So we, as adults, we kind of tend to resist that word. So a word I've used in recent years is a success partner. Who is going to be your success partner in making this change? And that's why I've seen so many times, I saw this yesterday and as well with the groups we're working on behavioral change. It is so much more powerful. And I play in a sports team as well, and I see the same effect on a sports team. You will push yourselves more when you're with a group of people than you will as an individual. And a good example here is to reflect on, you on the gym on your own. How much will you push yourself if you're on your own versus how much would you push yourself if you're in a team? If you're in a team exercising or you're doing training together, I believe there's a huge difference in energy and positive social pressure. So that's the third element, involving others to help you be successful. The fourth element is about setbacks, and about setback ready. And I quote the work of Charles Duhigg here. Anytime we're trying to change a behavior, especially those that are deep rooted, old habits that we've been having with us for perhaps a long time, there will be moments of weakness. Absolutely, there will be setbacks. My old sensei, Lean Sensei, he used to tell me, Michael, no plan is a plan without a plan for how you're going to deal with unplanned setbacks. So it really is important. This is, of course, in the PDCA, PDSA cycles, the importance of expecting that there will be setbacks, because there's a default condition. And I have this in the past, if you miss one day, or if you break one day of your diet, or you go back into your bad habit for one day, there's a tendency to say, the what the hell effect. What's the point anymore, and give up. And it's easy to get discouraged. But what we encourage people to do when they go through the messy approach is, no, expect setbacks. What are you going to do? And the countermeasure we call is here, what is your plan B? So accept that plan A is not going to always happen. What is going to be plan B? And it's simple. And this is probably one of my favorite exercises. And it's so simple to do, is that end of day journaling. And I say this to the audience I was with this morning, the two questions I always ask myself at the end of the day, what went well today, the three things that went well today, and the three things I could have done differently. So that for me is a great questions, a small, tiny reflection questions you can ask yourself, the team can ask yourself, and almost on a daily basis, so that they were truly reflecting on any setbacks and even any near misses. And I know this audience of listeners understand the importance of how near misses are golden opportunities to learn. So that's the fourth element, being setback ready. And there's a series of questions people ask to prepare themselves for that. And then the last element of the messy approach, which some people find is this applicable here, because they think, and sometimes people think incentives are in terms of like for children. I'm sure we all can recall back to our childhood when sometimes the threat of a punishment, or let's say the promise of reward, was enough to get us through to do certain things that we perceived as difficult or did not want to do. Incentives don't just work for children. They're still applicable to us today. And one of the people I've been greatly influenced by, Tim Ferriss, the author of the 4-Hour Work Week, and this podcast that I've been following for years now, is, willpower and good intentions, they're not enough. We need incentives. We need rewards and punishments. And time. I'm not talking financial here. I know people may be talking about is giving people money for this. Absolutely not. I'm not talking money here. I'm talking about what, because there's many different definitions of reward. Complimenting someone can be a reward. Allowing them to have a pizza lunch can be a reward. There's thousands of different types of reward, but it's being intentional with picking, okay, what is my reward for doing this behavior correctly? Let's say if you complete, in the book, we talk a lot about the importance of the start of your day, or what we call the morning ritual. The morning ritual when you wake up, and your morning ritual once the first things you do when you get to work. A proven part of creating new habits is to have a reward for doing those behaviors. It could be as simple as a cookie, a cup of coffee, allowing yourself to check social media at the end of the ritual, whatever it may be. And sometimes a punishment can have the same effect. And if you study any of those, extreme challenges that people put themselves through, punishments have been quite effective. And I know, and this may make people smile, but the concept of an anti-charity, what I mean by this is you put money on the table that if you fail to complete some sort of behavioral challenge that you give yourself, whether it be in meditation, whether it be in reading, whether it be you want to write a book, that if you fail to achieve that goal, that you donate $100, $200, whatever it may be, to an anti-charity, the organization that you hate with all your heart. So these are, some of the people kind of laugh at these questions, but there is a science to all of these questions, because it's all pointing at this formula. And I believe that the characters that I've highlighted in the book, as well as the thousands of people that have gone through the workshop, that this is a formula that is not, I didn't invent this. Maybe I'm putting it together in this by using this famous soccer player's name, but this makes universal sense. This is really leveraging how the subconscious brain decides to make a behavior into a habit. That magic of neuroplasticity. So you see my next slide?
Yep.
So the bold statements that I'm making in this book, and from my findings and from my many workshops, and I do multiple workshops every month here in the Philippines with professionals, with students, that you can make personal change easy, both in business and life, if, and here's the if, and there's 3 conditions. You focus on creating the right habits at the right time, using the right approach. So it's the right habits, and I'm sure you might have heard the concept before, keystone habits. What are those habits that have the biggest impact? It's like the domino effect. So for example, we know that team reflection is a keystone habit for teams. We know that gratitude is a keystone habit. Gratitude in teams is a keystone habit. We know that exercise are keystone habits. We know that for families, eating together as a family is a keystone habit. We know that journaling is a keystone. We know there's certain habits that are more powerful than other habits. So it's identifying what are those things that have the biggest impact on the behaviors. And if you want to take a corporate example, I love the study that was done about the work in Alcoa and how Alcoa became the safest company in the world. And I guess this is made famous by Charles Duhigg's work about their keystone habit was safety, focus on safety and the impact that had on the rest of the organization. And then at the right time, and I really, my years of struggling with personal change here, the thing that has had the biggest impact on me is focusing my behavioral change efforts at the start of my day. And that evidence is not just based on my own personal experience, but the experience, the millions of testimonies, audio, video, and written, that you will just find into Google about the people that are swearing, and the testimony of the power of a morning ritual, the start of your workday, the start of when you wake up, as the best time to create these success habits in your life. And then the third aspect to that is the right approach. And the right approach is asking yourselves the right questions. It really is asking yourself the right questions. I always, and two of my favorite examples of companies that have mastered habit creation is Toyota and Starbucks. And obviously Toyota is a famous example that everyone knows. I'm sure maybe people are drinking a Starbucks as I'm speaking right now. But those two companies are really masters, and for a lot of things they can be complimented on, but I really believe that how they created these employee habits is something that we can really admire. And I know the work of Mike Grogan and Toyota Kata, one of my favorite books, was absolutely brilliant at highlighting how those habits were created. And I really believe it's the daily things on a daily basis. For those that practice Kata or are familiar with the Kata approach, it really is that 1% every day, that daily focus on improvement, asking those right questions that creates those new wires happening in the brain, and that create that change. So I really believe that personal change does not have to be painful, which is a false belief, and that we can create cultures of excellence, both as individuals and as teams, and we can create world-class results. And I'm so excited to share this with as many people as possible. So we're coming to the end of my talk. I've intentionally I didn't want to talk for, I remember one of the advices of my teachers, I'm breaking that advice right now. It's the best teaching advice I ever got, and I want to share with you guys now. It says, Michael, the more you talk, the less they learn. The more I talk, the less you learn. So apologies to everyone on the call for talking for the majority of this call. I want to kind of open it up for Q&A. But before I do that, I want to remind people, I am giving this book away for free. I want you to have it. I want people that you love and care about that are struggling with this topic and personal change, whether it be with their health, whether it be with their finances, whether it be relationships, whether it be spiritual. I know there's a lot of pastors actually that I work with that are using this to help create spiritual habits with their people that they're trying to lead, and whether with your teams to create more confident, more productive, more focused employees. I'm not a genius. I'm not a guru. I've been quite blessed to get to this position, but I want as many people. This has become a mission for me to get this book into the hands of as many people as possible. So I'd like to open up for questions, but maybe, Mike, could I pass it over to you to see if the folks have got questions?
Sure. I've unmuted the phone, so if anyone has a question, please chime in. We'll have a bit of dialogue here, and I've got some thoughts and some questions that I'll offer that to others on the call as well. We've got Mike all excited now. He's going to have a rough time going to sleep after this.
Yeah, I'm going to give out to you guys if I can't get to sleep.
Yeah. Good.
It's almost midnight here, but it's okay. I was looking forward to this call for a long time.
Well, appreciate you doing this and also making this book available. And I'm going to do my best to get it to everyone and encourage others to do the same thing. So we'll have it spread like wildfire. You mentioned, Mike, a number of resources that were some of the key pivotal learning points, and those were captured on the webinar as you were talking. Do you have either on your website or available somewhere, if you had, in addition to your book, if you had people read or talk or learn about other key contributors to this area, is there sort of like your favorite learning list that you could share?
Yeah, I could, after this call, I could put together.
Okay.
I think maybe I'll just highlight 2 books, not to overwhelm people with my list of 100 books I could ask you to read. But for those that have not read these 2 books, I think they're game changers, totally game changers. And number 1 is Toyota Kata by Mike Grogan. And when I was reading that book, I've never reflected so much more on my failures than while reading that book. It really is a fantastic book into the science of why Toyota are really good at creating these habits, what he calls the improvement kata and the coaching kata. So game-changing book, Toyota Kata. The second book is my friend Charles Duhigg, and The Power of Habit. Charles has been very good to respond to some of my email. I've been harassing him for a while. He's been very good to just answer some of my messages I've been sending him. But that book, the concept of the trigger and the concept of the war, the habit loop. I know BJ Fogg and the folks at Stanford have built on that. It's just, we're learning so much. This does not have to be hard. And that's what's, I get frustrated when I think about, my past failed attempts at trying to learn new languages or trying to become, read more, learn more, eat, exercise more. Even my spiritual habits, I've failed so many times, and it did not have to be that way. It really does not have to be that way. We're getting closer and closer to creating, superhuman 2.0, if you will. And I believe the next generation will, if we get this right, especially in the teaching of it, not just discovering these methods, but in the teaching of these methods to others, that we'll be able to bless the next generation to be better than us. And I think that's one of the ultimate goals that we can get from this.
Great. Appreciate that. I'm going to pause again and see if anyone else on the call has some questions for Mike. I think you've covered a lot of good topics here. I think people are interested in reading the book. Another question, Mike, as you're teaching people and you lay out this approach with the acronym and encourage people to try and experiment, what do you do to help support follow-up? Do you have people check in? Do you arrange follow-up meetings or follow-up calls, or maybe that's part of the social connection support system? What is it that you personally do to try to encourage people to keep practicing?
Absolutely great question. One of my favorite questions. And this is, when I started doing these workshops a few years ago, this was the number one thing that I messed up. I underestimated the power of social. I assumed that everyone had enough knowledge and inspiration on the one-day event to be able to change the behavior, and that was a total failure on my side. What I do differently today is, we spend a lot of time on this. We call, before you leave the workshop, you have a success partner, and before you leave that workshop, you and your success partner have made clear what the expectations are to each other. And we found that creating success partners, and sometimes people form groups of 3 or 4, what we call success groups, or as small as just 2 people, so success partnership. That is a secret ingredient, because we kind of create expectations that if your success partner fails, that's not their fault, it's your fault. You're being a bad success partner. And we kind of we put some humor in it as well, but the success partners will develop an emotional connection with each other, because they start sharing to each other the why. Let's say they want to create these new productivity changes in their life, but it's the why behind those changes that is so powerful, that creates that emotional, empathetic connection between the success partners and the success groups. And we found that is a fantastic, and creating expectations of them meeting once a week for a follow-up, that has been extremely powerful of creating that social environment. And so that's one aspect. If I were to call out a second aspect, and I credit technology here, there's an app called Habit Share. I don't know if folks are familiar with it, but there's many different apps out there for tracking habits. One of the ones I love, because it's free, and a lot of our classes use it, it's called Habit Share. And that has really helped the teams stick to, and it's simple. I know this leverages the work of Dr. Atul Gawande on the checklist manifesto. And of course, a lot of our listeners hear the importance of standard work. But as simple as this is, we seem to, once it's our ego that gets in our way. You know, our greatest enemy is ourselves. And when it comes to personal change, we think, oh, we don't need a checklist. And of course, leader standard work. Number one reason that's resisted so much is because of ego, pride. We feel insulted to think that we need a checklist to remind us of to do these certain things. But these checklists, whether it be paper or digital, can be extremely powerful. And especially when you pair that with the expectation that your success partner is going to be checking that list and you're going to be checking their list. I found that relationship and those expectations up front have been extremely powerful in creating that, in increasing the odds of success. So I have to make that credit disclaimer. I don't think anyone can ever make that claim that guaranteed 100% change, but it's all about how could I increase the odds to make it less likely to fail and more likely to succeed. And those doing those things I found to be quite beneficial.
Great. I appreciate that. I'm pondering a bit and thinking about if there's ways that we, through the technology that we do through the monthly webinars, could design some triggers as reminders for this. So I'm going to think about that as we move forward. But there could be more that we could do in addition to this initial introduction to the book and the concepts, but also to help with people as a follow-up support system. I have to think about that. Happy to help in any way. I'm going to pause one more time, see if anybody out there on the call has any questions for Mike. Okay. Oh, you got an additional slide here, Mike. You want to talk about this?
Yes, I was going to end with this little story. I've sent my email here because I'd really like to get feedback from people on what they thought of this presentation, what they think of the book. It really means a lot to me to get some feedback. But I want to share this little image. About half of the work, I guess not many people in America know this, but about half of the work I do is with the youth. And this picture is of a beautiful little girl called Mary in a city called Cebu. And we went to their school and we gave an inspirational talk. And we took this picture of this little girl because it reminds me of the power of the one. It breaks my heart. And I've been to many different countries in the developing world, especially the developing world, and of course in the Western world. But our education system is broken. Our education system in businesses is broken. I really believe, I'm so driven that we have to find the answer to the change problem. We cannot allow these heartbreaking statistics of constant failure with making change work, both as individuals and both as in teams and organizations. We have to provide the next generation with a better future. And I believe that, and one of the reasons I was so excited to take this call, Mike, is because I believe I'm speaking to leaders here, men and women that are in position to really experiment with new ways, not the continuously, as Einstein said, constantly work with things that haven't worked, traditional, ineffective teaching, but look to new ways that really we can create lasting behavioral change to give girls like Mary a better opportunity. So it keeps me awake at night. I get all these opportunities to give these talks to the youth, and it really means so much to me. I'm blessed to get this opportunity, but I know inspiration on its own is not enough, and knowledge on its own is not enough. These kids deserve better. Our employees and our businesses deserve better. We have an obligation, us and folks on this call and the folks that read the book, is to pass this knowledge on to other people so they too can experiment on this themselves and reap the benefits of creating lasting personal change. So I'm extremely driven. My number one reason for doing this is for our youth, to provide them with a better future, to give them better opportunities than we have, to make them better than us. So I really, once again, thank you, Mike, for giving me the opportunity, giving this platform to share this message.
Well, thank you, Mike. And two Mikes that have never met can probably do a lot of work, and we'll try to keep it moving forward. So next steps, the recording from today's is going to be moved over to the recording slot, part of our website. You can see it there is where it's going to be placed. In July, Lou Fries, friend and colleague with an organization, we're doing some work in Florida, is going to talk a little bit about natural leadership, a fascinating concept, and builds heavily on some of the things that Mike is talking about today. Friend and colleague Christian Wiedner is going to give a presentation July 28th on lean mindsets, management systems, and methods, pulling on some of the things that I know Mike mentioned today as far as some of the work that Mike Rother and others have done, Toyota Kata. August the 18th, I got part 2 of a presentation. We call it the Pracademics Guide to Strategy Deployment. We talked about this a month ago, didn't get through all of the concepts, so we're going to continue on with it. There's probably going to be a part 3 down the road because there's a lot to learn about what really does work, what doesn't work as far as strategy deployment. And in September, friend and colleague Laura Brown from Memorial Care in California is going to talk about leader standard work and what she's learned. And that's a topic that Mike was mentioning today as far as practice habits and what works, how people try to keep that going and how that becomes as a useful methodology in their experience. So again, I invite anyone on the call or that listens to the recording, if you've got a story or lessons to share, I'm always interested in featuring them in our monthly webinars. And we've got a group on LinkedIn that people can ask questions. And who knows, after today's webinar, I might form another sort of a connection group as far as support partners. So Mike, I hope you get some rest after tonight's presentation for you and for the rest of the folks. Hope you have a good day. And if you're a father, hope you have a good Father's Day. And if you've got a dad, wish him happy Father's Day. And I'll be following up with a recording link for everyone that was on the call today, and you can forward it on to others. Thanks again.